Yeah.
Good evening. I was going to go straight into this show, but then I saw that City Field is offering up a egg roll with a rainbow cookie inside of it this year. So, Anthony, you're gonna have to tell me how this tastes over the weekend. What are you thinking? Are you purchasing this immediately?
I will because if things go south, this may be the best thing to happen to City Field this season.
Oh my God. Jay Kaplan is also here, not really willing to taste anything of the menu. My name is Steven Rabinowitz. Welcome to the opening day Sweet 16 edition of On the Sports Lines. One of the busiest weeks of the sports calendar is on, so I've made my assistant hold my calls, and if you saw last week, Anthony's calls as well. Sorry to talk about it. Back end of the show tonight will get us talking about the NCAA Sweet 16, bracket by bracket, and as by Sunday, we'll know which four teams will be hopping, Easter reference, over to Glendale, Arizona. But first, baseball! But not before we talk about betting on ball. We start with the baseball portion of the proceedings tonight with baseball's biggest star in Shohei Ohtani, and he's got some issues. In between games of an opening day series versus the San Diego Padres overseas, news came out of the firing of his now former translator, Ippei Mizuhara. Shohei's new team, the Dodgers, and Ohtani himself, claimed that the translator took significant amounts of money, upwards of $4.5 million away from him. Now, we need to know the whole story. And we're hearing a lot of different stories, and we may not find out about it for a long time, if at all. But since it's a story, here we go. Anthony, your thoughts on all of this?
Wow. So you know what? So many questions need to be answered. First off, how did he get access to Otani's bank accounts? That's number one. Number two, how did Otani not know what was going on? And also that there's been different stories in the since this is broken out. I mean, obviously, Mizuhiro has told ESPN that Otani had paid for his gambling debts, which is an absolute no-no and illegal. But then he changed his story 24 hours later, so that just added more questions to this whole thing. He said, and he's along with Otani's people has come out and said that he has never betted on sports and has never knowingly dealt with a bookie. But this is this is right now a bad look for Major League Baseball because Otani has become one of the faces of baseball, not just here in the United States, but of course internationally. And you see the huge following that Otani has, and obviously the big news in the offseason for his record breaking deal with the Dodgers. But again, you wonder, but this is going to be something that you wonder because it's an ongoing investigation. That's is how it would affect the Dodgers as the season go on. More important, how it affect Otani as the season go on. I mean, this is probably really the first time. I mean, it's not that he's not used to being under the microscope, but this is for an entirely different reason. If it's something that is illegal in the game of baseball, so I'm interested to see just how it will affect his on-field performance as time go on, and also if there's more that's going to come out. I mean, right now, from what we know, it's just a matter of it's been more of a he say, and not really enough to connect the dots on who's at fault. And obviously, I was talking to Jay about this last night. I said Atani can't speak English, maybe not comfortable enough to hold post game pressers. I would like to see him try to be get a little more comfortable without using a translator moving forward. Um, if it if it helps him as far as a mess like this, but also he's gonna have to learn how to do. He's gonna have to do it because he's got to get more comfortable around his teammates. It's a new clubhouse. He's around new players for the first time, really for the first time in his major league career, anyway. And it's going to be like I said, it's going to be a cloud over his head for the time being, and just a matter of if there's any damning information that could hurt him or his career that comes out later on that um could really tip this story one way or another.
Yeah.
Jay, this is a story that just doesn't have a necessary ending or an endpoint to it, but there is stuff to go on here.
Yeah, and what was initially interesting to me was how many times the story changed in the aftermath of it first breaking via the LA Times and ESPN. Though I will say, after watching Ohtani deliver his almost 12-minute statement through his new interpreter, and then reading the transcript on The Athletic, I came away with seeing how his old interpreter could have possibly done all of this without Ohtani knowing, considering how long the two knew each other. They came over from Japan together in 2018. How large a role he played in Ohtani's life, any and every type of communication with Ohtani, be it from the Dodgers, his agent, etc., all went through the interpreter, whether Ohtani was present or not. And how limited, as Anthony said, Ohtani's understanding of English seems to be even after all this time here. Now, this story may be happening in LA, but I doubt Hollywood could write this script, as we've yet to 100% establish fact from fiction. There's still a very real element of he said here. So follow along if you can. The story that Ippei Mizuhara first presented painted Ohtani as a wealthy friend who knowingly stepped in to help Mizuhara pay off his gambling debts. According to Mizuhara, Ohtani did this by sending a total of 9 payments of $500,000 each to alleged illegal bookmaker Matthew Boyer. Those payments, if they actually happened as Mizuhara claimed, even if they were made with helpful intent, may violate the federal tax code. The Associated Press has reported that the IRS is opening a criminal investigation into Mizuhara. ESPN reported that Ohtani's have initiated a criminal complaint against Mizuhara, though they didn't specify with which law enforcement agency. And Bauer is also under investigation by the IRS's Los Angeles office. Such payments, if they did indeed happen as alleged, could also run afoul of MLB CBA, as they may violate baseball's rules prohibiting employees from placing bets with illegal bookies. Because of that, Major League Baseball has also opened a formal investigation into the situation. Though Ohtani is not likely to be put on administrative leave, which is standard practice, while MLB's Department of Investigations is looking into a matter of this gravity due to the fact that the Dodger star is not facing any allegations at the moment. According to Ohtani, he's never bet on baseball or any other sport, and, quote, never have asked someone to do it on my behalf. I have never gone through a bookmaker to bet on sports. He followed that by saying that he did not make any wire transfers to Boyer. It was the transactions with Boyer that put Ohtani and Mizuhara on the radar of the reporters from the Los Angeles Times and ESPN. Ohtani alleges that Mizuhara never told him that those news outlets were chasing a story about those payments, despite Mizuhara claiming that Ohtani knew about the payments to Boyer and the conversations with ESPN. Ohtani went on to say that he had no idea about Mizuhara's gambling issues until Mizuhara addressed the Dodgers clubhouse in a rushed, weird post-game meeting that included President Stan Kasten, head of baseball ops Andrew Friedman, and owner Mark Walter in Seoul, South Korea, where the Dodgers were opening the season against the Padres. According to Ohtani, it was during that meeting that he was able to figure out some of what Mizuhara was saying in English, though without an interpreter standing next to him, he couldn't understand all of it. Ohtani said that he and Mizuhara met privately after the meeting in the Dodgers clubhouse, and that's when Mizuhara admitted to the gambling debt and to using Ohtani's money, at least, as you guys said, $4.5 million, to try and get out from under it. Ohtani's statement regarding that conversation says Mizuhara, quote, has been stealing money from my account and has told lies. Ohtani was quite blunt and direct with these allegations, flat out stating that Mizuhara lied to him and the Dodgers in addition to stealing a substantial sum of money. How Mizuhara got access to Ohtani's bank account, let alone sent multiple transfers to an alleged illegal bookmaker without Ohtani's knowledge, remains a huge and still unanswered question. A key part of the investigation will be to figure out how much money was actually taken from Ohtani's account and how it moved from his account to elsewhere, supposedly without his knowledge. It is unfortunate that this has happened at all, let alone to the biggest star in the game. And any way you look at it, as Anthony said, the optics are nothing but bad. But well over 100 years ago, Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis, the legendary baseball commissioner, emphatically laid down the law that there is no worse sin against the national pastime than illegal gambling and being involved in any way with those who profit from it. Here's hoping the next piece of baseball history that includes Shohei Ohtani isn't one that also includes the 1919 Black Sox or Pete Rose.
Only Jay would mention the name Kennesaw Mountain Landis in any portion of a conversation early today. I understand why.
Baseball history, nerd. Come on now.
Yeah,
look it up, kids.
Yes, considering the last time I learned about Kennesaw Mountain Landis was in my history class of baseball in college over 20 years ago. But it's a bad situation, however you look at it. Gambling is a lot different in today's landscape. So it's not that bothers me. It's just, what the heck is this press corps doing here? And that's the big problem. I understand if he doesn't have a great grasp of the English language because of the fact that he's been a star, but he has been in sort of anonymity with a team that just hasn't even come close to contending for playoff contention, even if it's in LA. So that I completely understand, but you probably should have talked about this sooner. You probably should get a better PR team sooner. I always say this, and I always say this perfectly. The first thing any star should do, whether they come to the United States, whether they get signed from a rookie deal, is learn how to handle PR. Learn how to handle social media. You don't even need to learn how to handle social media. Just know what to do in a crisis. If you don't have that, you're going to have these issues. And yes, this is the hot take world that we live in. So a situation like this, which has room for interpretation, is going to get room for interpretation. So I don't know how this is going to end. I don't think it's going to end bad, and I don't think, at least initially, Ohtani's game is going to be affected by it. But it's going to be baseball's biggest story for a while, even probably in the first month of the season, because, again, he's the deferred $700 million man. So you're already having all of that big story stuff, and now you come in and get this. I don't know what is going to happen, and I honestly could not even guess to tell you, and that's why we have a segment to tell you that we know nothing.
I will say, Rabbi, one of the things that, Anthony, you brought it up and we talked about it on text, is that if Ohtani had a better grasp of the English language, you wonder if things would have gotten this far. What I said to Anthony over text when he brought it up is that most of the Spanish-speaking players who come from Latin America, while they may never get to a point where they fully feel comfortable conducting interviews by themselves in English, they at least learn enough of the language to understand what's being said, even if they elect to respond in their native tongue through an interpreter. It would behoove Shohei Ohtani to get to that point with the English language.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of this, Jay. A great example is Francisco Alvarez. And earlier spring training, doing an entire interview on SNY in English, and that was the first time he had ever did that. And he said that he was learning English more, and starting to feel more comfortable, and obviously that's going to be a big deal as far as him interacting with his teammates and obviously his pitching staff and on game days. But it's just something that for Shohei, I think it would be a big step in the right direction for his own personal benefit.
Yeah,
but it's another story.
His own peace of mind.
Yeah, but also it's another story we've seen in years past with professional athletes and the people around them kind of getting so close to them that they're able to take advantage of the trust. Right. And it's a story that's happened time and time again. And again, it's another unfortunate situation here that may not have a solution anytime soon.
We need to move on from this, but this is developing. Let's just say that. Opening day is, and I can't believe I'm saying this, tomorrow throughout most of Major League Baseball, despite it still being cold outside.
Not for the Mets, though. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, it'll be Friday for us, okay?
Why I said most of the league. By the way, it's cold outside. As Anthony says, lioness groundhog, there's a bounty on your head. You have one job. One job. Let's talk with the locals, starting with the New York Yankees. Despite having an 82-80 record last year that gave Bronx Bomber fans early 90s flashbacks, the trade for Juan Soto, improved hitting, and active off-season moves make the 2004 Yankees hopeful, despite losing their projected opening day starter for the foreseeable future in Garrett Cole. Let's talk both halves of the inning, whatever metaphor you want to use. Pitcher and hitter under the microscope on River Avenue, and oh yeah, the dreaded X Factor, which could prove very good, or in some people's cases, very inconsequential and make me not even remember the name that I just said. Jay, the Yankee career of Giancarlo Stanton will be decided in the next few months. He is our hitter under the microscope, our first dissection, our first dissection in the class of Yankee science.
Yeah, there was definitely no shortage of candidates for this ankle, based on how bad the Yankees offense was last year compared to the previous years of the Aaron Judge era. But when you take a deeper look, which you guys know I always do, even after asking your opinion, Stanton was head and shoulders above the other choices. And it's fair to say, as the rabbi said to me on text, and as he just did right now to all of you live, Stanton's career in New York will be determined over the next 6 months that comprise the 2024 season. Hence, he's under the microscope. We all know the latest chapters of the Stanton story. Frequent soft tissue, lower body injuries have derailed his last 2 seasons, but even when he's been able to suit up, his production has been well below expectation, and he's been well nigh unplayable in the field and barely able to move around the bases. This has a lot of folk wondering what'll be the last straw that convinces owner Hal Steinbrenner that it's better to cut him loose and eat the remaining 4 years and $98 million on his contract. But that's only if, the owner can convince the player to waive his no trade clause for starters. But let's work off the presumption Stanton's going to be here. Since making the 2022 National League All-Star team, the 2017 NL MVP has been a shadow of his former self. His first half of 2022 was somewhat Stantonian, to borrow from John Sterling. 24 homers and 61 RBI in 76 games. Batting average and OBP were a little low, 237 and 319 respectively, but his slugging was on par, 516, giving him an OPS of 835. From that point onward, however, things went south badly, partially due to an Achilles injury that he tried to play through, which he said carried over into 2023 and hampered him all season long. He only managed to play 30 games after the 2022 All-Star break, notching just 7 homers and 17 RBI with a slash line of 151, 246, 336 for an OPS of 582. He followed that up with one of the worst seasons of his career, managing to play only 101 games last year, 65 of them at DH, well nigh unplayable in the field, as I said, and putting up a slash line of 191, 275, 421 with 24 homers and 60 RBI. Think about that, guys. He did that in 101 games all of last year. He pretty much did that in 76 games the year before. And an OPS of just 695. It was the first season that he graded out as a below MLB average hitter per the weighted runs created plus stat. His WRC plus of 89 meant he was 11% worse than the average major league hitter. I'm sure Stanton hasn't been overjoyed with how he's played over the last season and a half. I'm also sure GM Brian Cashman's comments about how being injured has become part of Stanton's game didn't sit well with the Yankees DH, but the numbers don't lie. Since joining the Yankees in 2018, he's played only 549 out of a possible 870 regular season games. That's just a 63.1% availability rate. I'm also sure both played some motivation in his change in offseason regimen. He focused more on being mobile so he could get back to being closer to his 2017 sprint speed percentile ranking of 70th than the 4th percentile he was in 2023. And his coming into camp noticeably lighter, saying this winter was the, quote, first whole healthy offseason in a long time. Stanton also talked about making some changes to his swing, but the scouting report seems to indicate that other than his hands maybe being set a little higher, his swing looks mechanically the same. That being said, and take spring training stats with a grain of salt, I do, the Yankees have to be pleased at what they've seen so far from Stanton. He hit 3 home runs in the Yankees' 12-0 trouncing of the Pirates back on March 20th, and after that game, He's got a 317, 370, 659 slash line with 4 homers, 11 RBI, and a 1.029 OPS and 41 at-bats this spring. If this carries over to the regular season and the Yankees get the 2023 version of Stanton, who had a 942 OPS against left-handed pitching, as opposed to the version that had a 640 OPS against right-handed pitching, then chances are good that the 2024 version of Stanton will likely be a 110 weighted runs created plus hitter, meaning he'll be at least 10% better than the average major league hitter. And the Yankees will take that every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
I think I just want him to get back to being an average hitter in a lineup where there are good ways to pick him up. And it's also noticeable when Judge is out last year and he couldn't really handle. He's the power guy when Judge is gone, and that didn't really happen. All right, Anthony. Nasty Nestor Cortez, and in his Yankee career, he's lived up to that name in both connotations, good and bad. He has a lot of eyes on him since the aforementioned cold injury.
Yeah, he is going to be the opening day starter for the Yankees. By the way, he would be just the 5th pitcher drafted and signed by the Yankees to start opening day, and the first is Andy Pettitte back in 1998. So there's a little history tidbit there. But yes, the All-Star of 2022 was among the list of casualties for the Yankees as injuries kind of torpedoed their 2023 campaign. He went from 158.1 innings and a 2.44 ERA in his All-Star campaign of 2022 to 63 in the 3rd innings last season and a disappointing 4.97 ERA. Hamstring issues derailed his start of the season in spring training. When he came back, he was ineffective, went back on the disabled list, and then only to come back August 5th, had a strong outing against the Houston Astros, only to permanently land on a disabled list again. That pretty much effectively ended his season. When Cortez is healthy, you see the recipe for success is a dose of cutters and just a combination of 4-seam fastballs and a lot of sweepers. In 2023, the cutters went down, and his percentage of fastballs, almost 52%, was a huge increase from 2022. Maybe it was a precursor to the shoulder injury issues that he was having all season long. But for the Yankees to really turn it around, especially with Garrett Cole's absence, Cortez got to be healthy. And obviously, when you see that the cutters and the sweepers at his effectiveness is what Cortez has best. You date back to 2022. You date back to his outings in the postseason. How he was able to get the weak grounders and minimize short heavy contact. That's what the Yankees need from him. For the Yankees pitching staff to really get off to a good start. With Cole gone and not knowing how long he'll be out, Cortez is a
2 months.
Yeah, 2 months really. Cortez is
2 months until reevaluation. We have no idea how long he's going to be totally out right now.
Minimum of 2 months, could be longer. I'll put it that way. But Cortez is the ace of this pitching staff for the time being, and he's going to have to remain healthy, and he's going to have to get back to 2022 form for the Yankees to really have a really outside, not even an outside shot, a good shot of getting back to the postseason.
What's funny is with Nestor Cortez is he has had the ace stuff before in this lineup, or at least the number 2 guy stuff in this lineup. But last year he was just all over the place and just a shell of his. You're right, just a shell of his former self. That would be good of a season for last year for my X Factor, Carlos Rodon, because his 2023 was, needless to say, terrible. Didn't make his first start because in spring training last year, he was injured with elbow nerve. I'm sorry. He was injured last year with a forearm injury and a lower back injury. That got him sidelined for months. He didn't make his first start until July 7th. He didn't win his first game until July 26th. His ERA never went really below 5. after that first start last year. It was always it ended up at 5.79. His numbers were some of the worst in his career for a guy who, in two different spots the years before, pitched it under 3 ERA. Not a lot to say really about what Rodon did. He's going to be making $26 million this season. He is in the second year of a 6-year, $162 million contract. Again, it was a 6.85 ERA and 3.8 in 14 stars. And with the rotation that you're seeing right now, pre-Garrett Cole coming back, the most reliable guy in that whole rotation might be Clark Schmidt, who pitched 159 innings last year and can at least get you to the sixth inning. Marcus Stroman has always had a long history with the New York Yankees, and now he is a New York Yankee. Carlos Rodon's attitude was pretty poor last year, as he taunted heckling fans at one point by blowing a kiss at them while walking off the mound. And after an 8-run, 0-out recorded meltdown, turned his back on his pitching coach on the way off the mound. What can I say? His spring training has been okay. It hasn't been great. There was one start where he only got 4 whiffs in his entire outing, even though he had 7 hits and a walk while striking out 2. I believe that was also the game where Joe Torre had to pull him, and I think Carlos Rodon would have gotten to one of his temper tantrums until he realized it's Joe Torre. Not a good look if I do anything like that. What Carlos Rodon could have is an ace-type season and something that could at least get the Yankees swimming along into a playoff spot, or at least into a possible division lead pre-Cole. But if he doesn't do well, and you've lost a guy, and you basically lost a guy already, whether it be to injury or just due to ineffectiveness, this team could be in deep waters even before everything even starts this season. A guy who the Yankees are not going to be winning games all the time 10-7. And if they do, that's not going to be a good sign for the rest of the season. So you're going to need a number 2 starter. You're going to need a number 3 starter. The whole rotation needs to be good, but if Rodon can be good, that's going to help bring the rest of this team up.
Amen.
All right. Amen. Yes. Yankee fans will be begging and hoping this whole entire season. Okay. All right, let's talk about the New York Mets 2023 season. When we did this last year, it started with hope, Buck Showalter, and a team that everyone thought would be in the upper echelon due to talent and payroll expectations. But the Looney Tunes, 1 year later, 2024 starts with whatever the opposite of that is. New manager Carlos Mendoza and Steve Cohen basically taking a step back and being like, rebuilding process, possibly. I don't care. My pockets. Gotta rebuild the farm system. Anyway, they also, by the way, just because New York teams can't have nice things, a little bit of symmetry. They also don't have their opening day starter as well in Kodai Senga. He'll be on a little lesser time, thankfully, for the Mets than Garrett Cole will be. All right, Jay. When we dissect, the good thing to do is dissect animals under the microscope. So let's dissect the flying squirrel. How about Jeff McNeil?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a couple of good choices here as well, but ultimately I went with second baseman Jeff McNeil due to the Jekyll and Hyde season he had in 2023 after such a terrific season in 2022. The overall productivity of the Mets batting order does somewhat hinge on him having a more 2022-like season, hence he's the hitter under the microscope for 2024. For those who don't recall, this was McNeil's 2022 for the Mets 101-win team. 326, 382, 454 slash line, 9 homers, 62 RBI, and 836 OPS, a 140 OPS plus, and a 141 weighted runs created plus. With that last pair of advanced batting stats indicating that he was about 40% better hitter than the rest of Major League Baseball. He won the National League batting title, made the NL All-Star team, and won a Silver Slugger Award. Now, I'm going to give you McNeil's 2023 season for the Mets 75-win team. Overall, 270, 333, 378 slash line, 10 homers, 55 RBI, 711 OPS, 96 OPS plus, 100 wins, weighted runs created plus. That, again, with that last pair of advanced batting stats indicating that he was barely an MLB average level hitter. Not great considering, especially compared to 2022, but not awful until you split his season into pre and post All-Star break. Then an interesting picture emerges. Here's his first half. 253, 331, 328 slash line, a 658 OPS, 3 homers, 26 RBI. His second half, 291, 337, 438 slash line with a 775 OPS, 7 homers, 29 RBIs. Now, the Mets shut McNeil down in late September after it was revealed that he had a partially torn ulnar collateral ligament, otherwise known as UCL, in his left elbow. At the time of that injury, it was also revealed that McNeil had been dealing with a series of chronic injuries in the first half, which contributed to his struggles at the plate. Though the new rules banning extreme shifts might have also played a part, as McNeil had to adjust his approach at the plate, as his bat-on ball skills are more of the wee willie keeler hit him where they ain't variety, look it up, than the put the ball in the air and try to drive it out of the park variety. McNeil received platelet-rich plasma injections to avoid surgery over the winter and reported to spring training feeling reasonably good before the Mets shut him down from hitting earlier in the month due to soreness in his left biceps during a batting cage session. The Mets held him out of Grapefruit League games until last week while he worked through that soreness, which was not related to his UCL injury. Goes good news there. The Mets are hopeful that despite the lack of exhibition game at bats, he only had 13 and didn't get a hit, he'll be ready to go for opening day, which, like we said, has been postponed until Friday. McNeil believes that there is a potential positive to the lack of spring at-bats, saying, quote, sometimes fewer at-bats can be beneficial. You don't get those bad thoughts or bad habits. You just let your natural ability take over and roll into the season. And there may be some historical context to back that up. In 2021 and 2023, he had bad Grapefruit League numbers, and they carried over into the season. His best big league seasons have come on the heels of having good Grapefruit League numbers. But with such a small sample size of spring at-bats, we really don't have anything good or bad to use as any kind of potential barometer to even attempt to project which Jeff McNeil the Mets will get in 2024. A return to his 2022 form gives new Mets manager Carlos Mendoza multiple options when filling out his lineup card, as McNeil's skill set makes him a versatile chess piece. Mendoza talked about that, saying, quote, the one thing about McNeil is that he provides versatility. I've been saying that all along, not only defensively because he plays second, left, or right, but you can hit him anywhere in the lineup. This is a guy that can bat second, lead off, third, fourth, seventh. He provides that versatility that I think is important when you are trying to construct a lineup. That's what a professional hitter can do for a team, and the Mets need Jeff McNeil to once again be that professional hitter if they're to compete for a National League wildcard spot. If he's 100% healthy, then I like his chances of returning to that 2022 form.
Anthony, you're our Mets insider on this show. Did Francisco Lindor get Jeff McNeil that card that he promised him in 2022? Because I feel like that could ruin a little bit of the 2023 season for him.
Wow.
You know what? I have to look that up and get back to you on that one. I'm just happy that they're not fighting over if there's a rat or a squirrel in the dugout these days.
Weren't they good that season, though? That's the problem. Maybe they need more squirrels, actually.
Well, it started out good, but then, yeah.
But was the squirrel incident in 22, though?
Yeah,
I was going to say.
We'll figure it out. Hey, look, if any day
he creates cash.
Hey, look, if he doesn't get him a car, I'll start a GoFundMe for Jeff McNeil if he can hit 300 this season.
How about you start a GoFundMe?
It has to be a Buick. I mean, I can just only think of something cheap right now.
How about you start a GoFundMe for Jose Quintana, your pitcher under the microscope, if he ends up with a pretty good ERA this season? He's our opening day starter.
I don't know if I could give a guy $26 million a GoFundMe page, but that's exactly what the Mets signed him for at the beginning of last season. Coming off eight of his first 10 years when he pitched over 200 innings. And of course, in New York Mets fashion, Quintana's injured and doesn't actually start makes his Mets debut until July 20th. His solid outing. He went 2 runs in 6 innings in a 6-2 loss. A no decision to the Chicago White Sox at home. Worked through 5 innings, 53 of his 77 pitches were for strikes. Unfortunately, when he did return to the rotation, the Mets were pretty much all out of it. Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander were now ex-Met players, and the Mets were basically playing for next season. But Quintana, when he came back in, did provide some stability to the middle of the pitching rotation that the Mets was hoping he would have brought to them at the beginning of the year. 3.57 ERA over 13 starts. He's not a guy who has high philosophy. He relies a lot on off-speed pitches and a lot of minimalized contact. So that is something that the Mets have to look out for, because last season there was a lot of issues with the Mets starters and not being able to throw strikes or get contact. And we've seen a lot of cases where the starters were only getting 4 or 5 innings in deep and exposing a very susceptible bullpen without Edward Diaz at the back end of it. Now, the Mets rotation already has question marks with Kodai Senga already out. Luis Severino, the Mets not sure if he'll be back to his old form as a signing. Sean Medea is a guy they signed as well. Adrian Hauser has only made 26 starts throughout his whole big league career. So there's a lot of question marks with this rotation. Jose Quintana, he's going to be opening day starter, and just like Nestor Cortez for the Yankees, Quintana's going to be counted on to provide stability at the top of the rotation, at the very least to get some Mets some quality starts with Senga out, and not as long as Garrett Cole, but what the Mets were missing last season from the entire rotation top to bottom was quality starts. And if Quintana can at least get them out to a good start, that'll be a step in the right direction for a team that just watches what was supposed to be the strength of the team last season become a very glaring weakness, as the starters couldn't get deep in games and the bullpen couldn't get outs when counted on the most. And we saw what happened as the season wore on, and the team just fell apart.
That's a team that's definitely not going to win too many 10-9 games, 10-7 games in division with teams like Philadelphia and Atlanta, who go by our favorite words, Anthony, let's bash, and do it on a lot of occasions. Speaking of let's bash, our last show, we talked about, one of our last shows, we talked about all of the non-Scott Boras clients that weren't signed. Eventually, they all signed, including one just yesterday, and Jordan Montgomery. I'll get to him in a minute when we talk about Arizona. But JD Martinez signed a couple of weeks ago, and he's going to be this team's X factor because he's going to be their DH. Now, this was a who's that battle until JD Martinez actually came into the fold, with players like Ji-Man Choi and others, including former Yankee Luke Voigt, looking to fill that role. But they saw JD Martinez eventually still on the market and signed him for a 1-year, $12 million deal. You get a lot with JD Martinez. You get a guy who, in the words of Big Al of the Little League World Series fame, he hits diggers, and he hits a lot of diggers. He is almost every year gone above that 30 plateau that he's been healthy. Actually, he got 33 last year with the Dodgers. Didn't hit amazing numbers the year before that. Only 16 with Boston, but then 28. You got 45 in 2017 with 2 teams, 43, 36. The guy is just a productive guy and is what you need in what is the position that is only hit, a designated hitter. But what's interesting to me is in the beginning of this summer, in the beginning of the winter, he actually rejected an offer from the New York Giants. The San Francisco Giants, New York Giants. And
That's since 1957, dude.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get my words out here. Listen, if you do 2 podcasts in a row, you can screw up one time in the incorrect name of New York Giants and San Francisco Giants. So he had said before with that Giants run, if I go there and I hit 260 with 20 home runs, people are going to say I'm old and washed up and kind of done. So MLB.com actually did an adjusted ratio of compared to what he hit and what his numbers would be if he played all his games in San Francisco, then all his games in New York. It takes into effect climate, where the home run fields are. And even though it's the least friendly place for right-handers to hit, the numbers are kind of alarming. Last year, he had 34 home runs, would have hit 24 only if he played all his games in San Francisco. He would have hit 39 if he did it with the Yankees. And he actually improved on that number in 21 and in 19 as well. And all of his numbers would have been terrible in San Francisco. So he would have actually, since 2016, he would have had 13 more homers if he had actually played all of his games in New York. So I think it's a good move. It's a low risk move for a guy who's 36 years old and is a guy who is literally there to stabilize a lineup. The designated hitter spot was not even close to the Mets' best hitter over the last few years. We know what happened with Daniel Vogelbach. He hit 233 with a 742 OPS, 13 home runs, and 48 RBIs last year. In his entire New York Mets run, the man who has once used Milkshake by Khalees as his walk-up music, look it up, 241, 359, 415, slash line, 19 home runs, 73 RBIs. There's a reason why the Mets non-tendered him in 2023. Now, the Mets will have DJ Stewart, split the JD, get the DJ, as a backup in the designated hitter position, but they needed a professional masher like JD Martinez in the lineup, and I think he is going to be a huge X factor for a team that could rank if everything goes the correct way.
Well,
go ahead.
What would be interesting for me to see this season is JD Martinez, how his power is going to translate to City Field, which has been, at least in recent years, become more of a balanced ballpark. Early on, obviously, the first 9-10 years, it was very more pitcher friendly. Obviously, it's become more of a balance with the outfield fence has been moved in. Also, he's going to be batting fifth projectedly. He has to provide protection for Pete Alonso, who may more likely be batting fourth, and clean up in that lineup. And that is an added dimension that Martinez being in the lineup could help would help the Mets substantially, particularly when you have maybe a healthy Marte or even Nimmo and Francisco Lindor hitting ahead of him in the lineup. That top half of the Mets lineup, you look at it, if healthy, they're not easy outs. And more importantly, you can't piss around Pete Alonso, which we saw a lot of teams doing, not just last season, but in 2022 has that power vacuum just was notably absent once you got past Alonso in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it on the show multiple times last year. As you guys remember, the DH spot in the Mets lineup was a black hole. It was non-productive. And we knew that was going to be one of the positions that Stearns was going to have to figure out a way to massively upgrade. Great pickup, and granted, he's not going to start the season with them as he ramps up on, extended spring training down in Florida. But I got to figure he'll be up before the end of the month. The guy's a professional hitter. He's a veteran hitter. I don't think it's going to take him that many spring at bats down in the Grapefruit League to get, back up to snuff. But yeah, I definitely think this length, Anthony, you said it. I mean, it adds length to the Mets lineup, something they didn't have last year. And it should make it tougher for people to pitch around Pete Alonso.
And one thing that's going to be noticeable is the more protection Pete Alonso gets, the more they'll be willing to, the two sides will be willing to negotiate, because if the Mets get off on the wrong foot this year and are leaning towards that under 500 record that they had last year, who knows what Pete Alonso's future will be come July or August. I'm hoping for the Mets' sake and hoping for New York's sake that he stays around, but you never know in this baseball world because there's a lot of moving parts and they go quickly. All right. Whoever said the phrase, you can't depend on others, you can only have to do it yourself, never watched baseball. It's the sport of scoreboard watching. So we're going to watch 4 teams for you right now in this final MLB segment of Around the MLB. Let's talk about 4 teams and start with Jay with one of the big AL East teams to look out there. They won 100 games last year. They also suspended an announcer from talking good about their opponent. How dare they? And the Baltimore Orioles are remarkably building something that we never expected just 2 years ago.
Yeah, and not to speak ill of the dead, but just like I used to say about the insert current geographic location Raiders here, they weren't going to improve as an organization until Al Davis passed away because he was never going to sell the team. The Orioles were never truly going to get back to where they used to be until Angelos either died or sold the team. Ironically enough, in the space of a month or so, he wound up doing both.
Well, the family did. The family did the last part, but unfortunately, Peter died last week. So.
Yeah. However, getting back to the on-field situation here, an offense that was in the top half of the AL in pretty much every category returns almost all of their bats. The only loss was second baseman Adam Frazier. It's led by a pair of Silver Slugger Award winners in catcher Adley Rutschman, who put up a 277, 374, 435 slash line with 20 homers, 80 RBI, and an 809 OPS. An infielder and American League Rookie of the Year, Gunnar Henderson, who put up a 255, 325, 488, 489 slash line with 28 homers, 82 RBI, and an 814 OPS. Plus right fielder Anthony Santander, who led the O's with 28 homers and 95 RBI. All told, the Orioles returned 7 hitters with at least 14 homers and 60 RBI. So despite top prospect Jackson Holliday not coming north with the team, more on that in a bit, they theoretically shouldn't see any drop in production at the plate. The missing piece for the denizens of Camden Yards seemed to be a legitimate, we have a chance to win every time he takes the ball ace at the top of their rotation. Kyle Bradish has ace potential after finishing 4th in the 2023 AL Cy Young voting after putting up a 12-7 record with a 2.83 ERA over 30 starts and 168 2/3 innings pitched with an FIP, fielding independent pitching, Rabbi's favorite stat, of 3.27, a whip of 1.
Love the fielding independent pitching. I love it when you mention that.
Which is why I take every opportunity to do so, partner.
A
whip of 1.043 to go with a 2.1 homer rate, a 25% strikeout rate, and a 6.6% walk rate. Unfortunately, he won't be on the opening day roster as he was diagnosed with a partially torn UCL, in his right elbow in mid-February. Thus far, Bradish has been able to avoid surgery. He had actually improved to the point where he was throwing bullpen sessions, but he's not yet ready to join the rotation. Now, GM Mike Ellis expects the right-hander to join the rotation early in the first half of the season, but further adding insult to injury, no pun intended, was finding out that left-hander John Means, who's trying to come all the way back from 2 years of injury, was a month behind schedule and would also not make the opening day roster. So what did Ellis do to offset those setbacks? He went out and traded for former Milwaukee Brewers ace Corbin Burnes and did it without giving up any of his top 5 prospects. Now, even if Burnes is a 1-year rental, he's repped by Scott Boras, so chances are good that he prices Burnes out of the Orioles' acceptable range. The 3-time All-Star and 2021 Cy Young winner is considered by most in the industry to be a top 3 starter in all of Major League Baseball and could be what puts the O's over the top. Burnes went just 10-8 in 193 2/3 innings for the Brewers last season with a 3.39 ERA. First time with an ERA over 3 since becoming a regular in the rotation. But he did put up the best walks plus hits per inning in the National League and 5th best in all of baseball, 1.069. And since 2020, among all qualified starting pitchers, he ranks 5th in ERA at 2.86, 3rd in FIP at 2.84, 5th in innings pitched at 622 1/3, and 7th in strikeouts per 9 at 11.06. The only other issue that Baltimore needed to address was locking down the 9th inning with closer Felix Bautista out for the year as he recovers from Tommy John surgery. Ellis brought in one of the best closers of this era in former Philly Craig Kimbrell to handle that. Now, Kimbrell may be more prone to inconsistency these days than he was in the first 8 full years of his career when he was an absolute lights-out closer for Atlanta and then Boston, where he accumulated 332 of his career 417 saves, had an ERA under 2, a whip under 1, and averaged 14.6 strikeouts per 9 innings pitched. But he's still more than adequate replacement for Bautista. As for Jackson Holliday, son of 15-year Major League Baseball veteran Matt Holliday, who despite a spring where his slash line was 311, 354, 600 with 2 homers, 6 RBI, and an OPS of 954, and appeared to have done enough to win the everyday second base job, he was reassigned to the minor league camp this week and will likely start the season at AAA Norfolk. The 19-year-old put up a slash line of 323, 442, 499 with 13 homers, 84 RBIs, 127 runs scored, 28 steals, and an OPS of 938 in 145 games across 4 minor league levels last season. So he doesn't seem to have much else to prove down there. Granted, the final roster hasn't been announced yet, so despite the logjam in the middle infield spots caused by Henderson taking over as the everyday shortstop, Jorge Mateo, who can play both second base and shortstop, plus veteran Colton Wong, who has a contract opt-out if he doesn't make the roster, the question is not if Holiday will be in Baltimore this season, but when. Considering that we're talking about a player whom Ellis said has already moved up the ladder at a faster pace than the organization has seen in several decades and is considered a future batting champ, I'm guessing it'll be sooner rather than later, and he could wind up being the final piece of the 2024 puzzle in the same way that Henderson was in 2023. The AL East will once again go through Charm City, fellas.
Chris Bryant had the same issue a couple of years ago. I remember that was really the first time we talked about player-controlled years, and that's where this first came up. And just like baseball, nothing actually evolves. In 8 or 9 years, and we're still at the same thing again at this point. Might be the right move financially, but morally, very, very wrong. Okay. Anthony, we're sorry. We're doing it to you again. We're making you talk about the Atlanta Braves. Death, taxes, and the Atlanta Braves being the top threat in a stacked NL East.
Yeah, the Atlanta Braves, as we last saw them, they won 104 games last season and had a record-setting offense, only to once again bow out in the divisional round of playoffs, and once again at the hands of the Philadelphia Phillies.
And once again, in 4 games, by the way, so life really does imitate art.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a very unlucky number for Atlanta when it comes to having to run into the Phillies the last 2 years of the postseason. But we look at the Atlanta Braves in the offseason. They added 2 new starters and Chris Sale and Ronaldo Lopez for a team that lost Max Fried and Charlie Morton headed into the postseason. The question is going to be, do they have enough pitching? One of the questions, anyway. Chris Sale obviously has had his injury concerns the last few seasons. He's only had 31 starts since the start of the 2020 season. 20 of those coming last season. Hasn't hit the 150 inning mark since 2018, and he last played 180 innings in 2017. Lopez is also another high risk, high reward factor for the Atlanta Braves starting rotation. He hasn't been a full-time starter since 2020. He's only had 63 innings over the last 3 seasons, and of course, he's been mostly coming out of the bullpen. His career ERA is 4.73 as a starter, versus a 3.01 ERA as a reliever. When it is going for the Atlanta Braves, however, they still got that lineup. And the lineup that hit a record amount of that tied the 2019 Minnesota Twins for the most home runs in the season with 307. They have 5 finished with at least 30, 7 with 20. Ronald Acuna Jr. led the way, has the first player with a 40-70 season, 40 home runs, 70 stolen bases, and a runaway unanimous National MVP. Matt Olson finished 4th in that category with 54 home runs and 139 RBIs. Orlando Arcia, who probably will keep his mouth shut about Bryce Harper moving forward after last October, contributes 17. And now, when you know your lineup is good, when 17 home runs, it's the weakest link in a power-heavy lineup. But the Atlanta Braves, they can mash and mash well. However, this is a team that is not far removed from the 2021 championship campaign. So it's going to be worse. Now, championship or bust is a very overused term in sports, but for the Atlanta Braves, it definitely holds true. You look at the rest of the National League East, the Phillies are really the only team that can literally match and compete with the Atlanta Braves through 9 innings as far as offense. And we've seen in the postseason, the Phillies have the Atlanta Braves number. Atlanta is going to be a question of, can their starting rotation hold up, and can they get over that obstacle, or maybe even avoid the Phillies altogether if it's possible, and trying to replicate 2021 success with another deep postseason run in 2024.
But what's really interesting about this whole thing is you just mentioning avoiding the Phillies. The Atlanta Braves just dominated the Phillies in the regular season for those 2 straight years, and then come the 5-game series, they lose 3 out of 4 both times. It's just a very big mystery, and it's just one of those things that just seems to happen when you have division rivals going up against each other in a playoff series. It's almost like the fortunes turned the tables. I don't like how that's happened with the Dodgers last 2 years.
Yeah, and don't underestimate familiarity with division opponents. When you see a team enough, they pretty much become very comfortable with what they can do on their end of the table. But also, Citizen Bay Park. I mean, I don't know if there aren't too many home field advantages in October that actually come off as even frightening, intimidating. But that ballpark has become a house of horrors in October for the Atlanta Braves. We have seen the Braves play so well in the regular season, and then when the series shift to Citizens Bank Park, everything just falls apart. We saw it in Game 3 last year. We saw it in Game 4 the prior year. Well, Acuna actually, one play particularly, misplayed a fly ball that turned into an inside the park home run for a catcher. Like just the weirdest things has happened to the Atlanta Braves when the series shift to Philadelphia. Maybe the tides turn, maybe their fortunes change, but obviously the regular season is going to be just pretty much a measurement stick and a formality. They have to get the job done in October, and with a lineup that is pretty much almost intact from 3 years ago anyway, and the team that caught the Mets 2 years ago, and the team that bashed their way to another division title last season, it's going to come down to what can you do for me when the temperature dips and the calendar goes from the boys of summer to the men of fall.
Mm-hmm. Best team in baseball last year. The 2 teams that did end up in the World Series last year were both wild cards: the Texas Rangers and the Arizona Diamondbacks. That's in case you forgot what the World Series was last year. So I'm going to pick 2, I wouldn't say off the wall teams to talk about, but they both have the same kind of story. They are the 3rd best team right now in their own division, and they're looking to make a run themselves. Let's start with my NL pick of the San Francisco Giants, not the New York Giants, the San Francisco Giants. I get to play for the 2nd time on the show. They're just days away from taking the field. They had one of the weirdest seasons I've ever seen, winning 107 games after literally having no indication of being a powerhouse with a very young lineup. And then that dropped by 26-81 in 2022. And then they thought they would bounce back, but they actually dropped again because of a terrible end of the season last year and only had 79 wins. They fired Gabe Kaplan, and in the tradition of the Giants snatching a Padres manager on their team, they got Bob Melvin to be their new head man. Something's never changed. So they also added some big additions in the name of center fielder and leadoff hitter Jung-Hoo Lee, and platinum glove third baseman, and the guy we talked about on our last show, Matt Chapman. Now, of course, the biggest name of them all, Blake Snell, who they signed a couple of weeks ago to their team, signed him to a 2-year deal, but there's an opt-out out of next year, so if Blake has a Cy Young season like he did in 2023, he might be on the market again last year. These 3 names, 12.9 WAR combined, and 6 multi-year signings on this team, and there were a lot of cuts, obviously. You lose Mitch Haniger, you lose Jock Peterson, you lose Anthony DeScalfani, but the way that they performed in the last 2 years, probably for the best. This is going to bring this team's expectations. It's kind of up sky high in the National League West, where a lot of people will think that the Dodgers and Diamondbacks are 2 of the better teams, considering pedigree for the Diamondbacks from last year and for the Dodgers. Well, I think you can see why the Dodgers are the favorites, despite even having that Shohei Ohtani problem right now. And it's not even really a problem, honestly, in my book for the moment. They have had multiple players are going to have options on this team. So this might be one big thing. They also signed Robbie Ray in the offseason as well. If improvements from Snell and Chapman come, they're probably going to either get bigger contracts or they'll stay with the team. And then, of course, Jung-Hoo Lee, who got the biggest contract, by the way, of all of these people, 6 years, $113 million. He was one of the first to sign. He is a sabermetric dream out there. He's signed until 2027. So if all of the things come together for the Giants, I see them making a run. I definitely see them in a wild card spot. I definitely don't see them as the 81 and 79 win team. They're going to probably find a good middle this year and be competitive. On the AL side, I'm looking at the Seattle Mariners. Now, they didn't make a lot of real big moves in the offseason. Remember, they had that great series with the Astros 2 years ago. Last year, they came up short. Had a terrible beginning of the season. Ended up winning 88 plus games, and they were pretty much right in the thick of things until game 161, where they got eliminated. Texas won the trophy eventually. What the Mariners did this season was just kind of improve themselves into a better team and a more efficient team. They had the second highest strikeout rate in the league last year in 2023. So basically, 4 players here who corralled the K percentage of about 30% in Eugenio Suarez, Teoscar Hernandez, Mike Ford, and former Met prospect Jared Kelenic. They're all gone. You got Jorge Polanco, Mitch Garver, Mitch Haniger, Luke Raley, Luis Arias. They can get fewer strikeouts and they can get on base a little bit more. And then they traded for Gregory Santos, who is going to be one of their better relievers in the bullpen. He is one of the more electric relievers in the sport. And then you have a lineup you have a pitching rotation that begins with Luis Castillo. They traded for him in 2022. He's going to be a Cy Young contender, finished 5th in 2023. He has a plus 27 run value because of his unhittable 4-seam fastball. Made 33 starts last year, went 6 quality starts in 23 of them, and 7 innings in 10 of them. It's the best roster that the Mariners have had in quite some time. And remember, they played good with the Astros and Rangers. They were 9-4 against Houston last year, and they gave Texas a lot of good games. So I like the Mariners a lot. They could surprise some people and maybe come out of nowhere. Maybe we'll see some more playoff baseball in Seattle. Let's just stick away from the 18-inning games, guys. We don't want to have that happen again. I know we gave that awards, but 18 innings, I would like to watch a game in full. Although with the pitch clock, maybe 18 innings would be like a 4-hour game. I don't know. All right, let's move on to March Madness. It resumes tomorrow. And yes, every year we say, Jay,
it's the craziest tournament ever.
Yep, but note this, though. In the second weekend, 8 double-digit seeds advanced to round 2. Pretty high number, but only one of them got out of that weekend, and the only reason one of them got out of it was because they were playing another double-digit seed, that being NC State. Lower seeds this weekend, 14-2, and Kansas was one of the 2, so I don't count that. So it's really technically 15-1 when you think about it. All of these spots are chalk except for one team. All situations, it's either 1, 2, and 3, 2, 1, 2, and 4. 1, 2. It's interesting this how that ended up coming to be, and we'll talk about that as we go through each region. So Anthony's going to talk about a team that we're surprised to see. Jay's going to talk about the Captain Obvious pick, and I'm going to talk about one of the Sweet 16 matchups to look for in each region. So
just to clarify for those people tuning in, 1 seeds don't count in terms of teams.
1 seeds don't count. Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
we fully expect 1 seeds to get out of the first weekend.
Yes, although there might be a case or two that we made an exception, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. Mm-hmm. All right. So first up, kids, let's talk about the East.
Right. There's one exception.
Yeah, well, yes, we'll talk about that one exception in the next segment. But first, let's talk about the East. In this East, we have 1 seed UConn, 2 seed Iowa State, 3 seed Illinois, and 5 seed San Diego State. These games are being played in Boston, Massachusetts. So kids, get your Dunkin', put on some Dunkings, and head your way to the TD Garden. All right, Anthony, despite San Diego State... the Garden. All right, Anthony, despite San Diego State were national title runner-ups a year ago, you're surprised they're back in the Sweet 16.
Well, the surprise with San Diego State isn't the fact that they're there, but how they got there. I mean, yes, they flexed their muscle against a 13 seed Yale team and beat them up pretty good. 85-57, but obviously that was what we were expecting. The unexpected was how they struggled against UAB in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. Just barely getting through with a 4-point victory against a UAB team that many expected San Jose to kind of win with ease. But the offense has been kind of in and out. But where this team would be without Jaden Ledee, who knows? Because he's been on a tear these first 2 games, scoring 58 points in the 2 games. But here's the thing: maybe a testament to the kind of program Brian Dusher in his 7th year has been able to build. When you lose 3 starters from last season's run and then stay able to make it back to the Sweet 16, obviously now they get a rematch with the team they lost to in the national championship game in UConn in the Sweet 16. What they're going to have to do is they're going to have to do a better job of shooting the ball. I mean, they struggled in the second half against UAB with their shooting. They pretty much did a good job against the foul line. They're going to have to get some additional scoring too. Outside of Jadanian Lee, I'm looking at Butler as a guy who was chipped in with 20 points against Yale. Lamar Butler, I'm thinking about. He had 15 against UAB as well. So this is a team. I mean, they're surprised, but mainly because of the way they've been kind of inconsistent. I mean, we saw kind of a tale of 2 teams between the 2 games, and we see a San Diego State team that could look like the team of a year ago, where they was really efficient offensively, was able to control the glass and even play at their own pace, or a team like you saw down the stretch in the AAC conference tournament where they been inconsistent. They lost the championship game, and they really had a hard time getting through the first through a 12 seed. So right, so they are my surprised to be here, but mainly because of the inconsistency of the play. That is not necessarily because we didn't expect them to be there. I mean, they were literally a Sweet 16 team on a lot of people's brackets, but they haven't exactly looked like a Sweet 16 team. Nope. I don't know, guys. Jay, you shook your head. You want to chime in on what you've seen out of the Aztecs so far?
I'll tell you this. I mean, we kind of talked. I talked about it on last week's show. Is that they're not the same team that went to the Final Four last year and was lost to UConn. Still have some of the same.
Like Ledet. Ledet is their best player on the floor last year, and by far their best player on the floor this year too.
Right. They're supposedly able to score a little bit more than they were last year, though they still defend at a high level, though maybe not as high a level as last year. So they're a slightly different team. They're the only was it West Coast Conference? I never remember the conference.
They're the only Mountain West Conference team that's still left in the tournament. They lost in the final 2. Yeah. They lost in their final 2 to New Mexico.
Yeah, they're the only Mountain West team that I thought was appropriately seeded by the committee, but that's a different argument for another day. They're going to be a very interesting team to watch in this next round. Because if things break right for them, they could very well make it to the Final Four, but things could just as easily go south.
Yeah, but we know UConn does match up well with them, so this is going to be a very tough cast, especially because of the fact that I've learned that Danny Hurley still has the same outfit that he has worn during his entire national title run last year and has done the first 2 rounds. You know why? Because he carries a portable washing machine around to take care of his clothes the whole entire time. A portable washing machine. How do I get myself one of those?
Really I don't know. I mean, yes. Anthony, I'll tell you this. Rabbi and I saw UConn Sunday night, and they kind of played with their food a little bit against Northwestern, but when they finally flipped the switch, you saw.
And by the way, this is more of the second half that they were playing with their food.
Yeah,
their first 20 minutes was really dominant, especially defensively.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: Donovan Clingan is gonna, this game's gonna be determined by what he does. The guy had a double-double in the first half. He finished with 14, 14, and 8 blocks. UConn's a fully operational Death Star. I honestly don't know if anyone, even if they play a perfect game against UConn, can beat them, but UConn can beat you even if they don't have a perfect game themselves. That's the scary proposition for San Diego State.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot of that in Boston. That's going to be a very interesting matchup. Jay, Iowa State, we talked about their hot end of the season, and they're back here. Nothing to really disappoint about. Not surprised that they're here.
No, I mean, I've said to more than one person this season, you included, Rabbi, that Iowa State is a scary good basketball team. So I'm in no way surprised that they're in the Sweet 16. This is a team that leads with its defense. They're currently number 1 in the nation in adjusted defensive efficiency per KenPom and number 2 in turnover percentage. They force turnovers on about a quarter of their opposition's turnovers per Bartovic. And they just flat out wear their opponents down, and they turn games into a grind. I believe that if you can defend at a high level, especially in the NCAA tournament, it can take you far, especially when you have an all-conference guard like Tamin Lipsey leading the way. Now, the Cyclones show that they can score. I know it was a concern for Anthony when he's breaking down the bottom half of the region last week. They put up 82 in their first-round win over 15-seeded South Dakota State. Lipsey had 17.7 assists and 2 steals. All Big 12 freshman Milan Mamaklovic. I hope I said that right.
You got it.
Added 19 points as Iowa State had 5 players scoring double figures. They shot 64.7% on twos, 47.8% on threes. They went 11 for 23, while holding the Jackrabbits to just 44.8% on twos to offset the 41.7% they allowed on threes. Their defense was on full display, forcing turnovers on almost 21% of South Dakota State's possessions, and they racked up 11 steals. Now, they struggled on offense, and this was Anthony's concern, or in the win over number 7 seed Washington State. They managed just 67 points. They shot only 37.2% on twos, managed just 7 triples, though they did it in 14 attempts, so there's a 50% rate. But winning the free throw battle, going 14 of 17 at the stripe, and only managing to pull away in the second half once they settled down and stopped taking some ill-advised and forced shots. Something they can't afford to do against their next opponent, Illinois. You give Illinois opportunities when you're doing that, and they will run you out of the gym. But once they did settle down, their defense, the one that they hang their hat and their Final Four chances on, rose to the occasion and wreaked some havoc. Iowa State won the turnover battle 13-6. They're plus 6.5 in the turnover margin over the first 2 games, and they converted those 13 Wazoo turnovers into 21 points. The pressure the Cyclones can bring to bear on defense forces teams into making mistakes, and those mistakes are what erases any offensive rhythm that an opponent may have had, which leads to Iowa State wins, even if the Cyclones are struggling on offense themselves, such as when leading scorer Keyshawn Gilbert puts up a 3 for 14 clunker, as he did against Washington State. However, there is one big positive that head coach TJ Otzelberger can take away from the first 2 games in it, and it's that Lipsey has been looking for and knocking down his outside shots. The scouting report on Lipsey is to sag off him because he's a fast pass-first point guard, but he looked for a shot more, largely because the Cyclones needed him to in Omaha, and his confidence level has got to be pretty high, as evidenced by the fact that he knocked down 2 step-back threes in the second half of that win over Washington State. He's 5 for 9 so far on threes in the NCAA tournament, and is averaging 16 points a game to go along with 5.5 assists. The knock on the Cyclones is that they don't have a true go-to scorer. Now, guard play wins in March. Lipsey's a winning guard. If he can be that go-to scorer and the Cyclones can keep up this hot streak as a team from beyond the arc, they shot 18 of 37. That's 48.6% in these first 2 games, along with the nation's number 1 defense since February 1, then I won't be surprised to find Iowa State in the Final Four.
But Iowa State is facing Illinois, as you mentioned, in that Sweet 16 matchup. And this is your classic battle of offense versus defense. Very simple. Yep. Let me get a little bit more into Iowa State's defense. It is 4th in the nation in all scoring defenses, only 61.2 points per game in any of their last 10 games. No team has scored over 65 points. And That's pretty good. Their last loss was back in February to Houston, February 19th to be exact. And Iowa State has just willed their way into games. If you saw that Big 12 title game versus Houston, you know what the best of Iowa State can be. However, Illinois ranks ninth in the nation in points per game, 84.6, and in their last 4 contests, they've averaged 91.3 points. Is that good? That's good, right? I just wanted to make sure.
I believe they dropped a Ben Franklin somewhere in that stretch as well.
Oh, they sure did. A lot of teams have been dropping Ben Franklins this tournament. They had a 54. Illini shot 54.2% against Morehead State in that first round, and then they topped it by shooting almost 60% of the field against Duquesne. Marcus Damask, you talk about forwards. Well, yeah, you talk about guards, but here's a forward that can do everything. In that game against Morehead State in the first round, 12 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists. That's a triple-double. That hadn't happened in the tournament in 5 years since a little guy by the name of Ja Morant did it in 2019 for Murray State. Now, you want to talk about guard play? Let me give you Terrence Shannon Jr. Very questionable issues with criminal charges that he's been facing, but he is one of the most hated players in college basketball, and well, guess what? He's done pretty well for himself. 6 in a row. Illinois has won. They are also 9-1 in their last 10, just like Iowa State is. 25 points per game for Shannon Jr. in all of those games. He's averaged 30.5 points in that stretch that I mentioned, and his shot from the floor an outstanding 56 of 108. Oh yeah, and he's also drawn 58 free throw attempts in those games as well. So you talk about a hot shooting guy. That is a hot shooting guy. This is just the very simple offense versus defense. What will win? Now, you talked about Iowa State. You talked about them only scoring 67 points against Washington State. Remember, they were tied at the half against them, 27-27 against Washington State. And then they went 40-29 in the second half. Really made a game that looked like it was going to be nip and tuck the entire way. Not really nip and tuck anymore. And that team is a younger team also. The really big senior on that team is Curtis Jones, who had 14 points as he came off the bench. If Iowa State can hold Shannon to pedestrian numbers, Iowa State's going to win this game. But the best player on the floor is going to be Illinois' Terrence Shannon Jr. And if he does that again, I see Illinois winning this matchup and being a pain in the ass for UConn or San Diego State to be playing in a regional final.
100%.
And it's going to be a very interesting bracket. But let's
what is it? Irresistible force meets the immovable object. Who wins?
UConn does. Chronically, next on the board. There's my fan letting me out there for a second.
Rabbi, who's your adopted favorite college basketball team?
That would be UConn. That would be UConn. All right. Let's chronologically go next on the board, as in they also play Thursday, to the West region, as the Crypto.com forum will be blessed with number 1 seed North Carolina, 2 seed Arizona, 4 seed Alabama, and 6 seed Clemson. Geography majors, which one of these things is not like the others? Which one of these things is gonna travel less? You know the answer to that. Anthony, let's talk about the team you're surprised, and it's Clemson, one of 4 ACC teams who made it to the Sweet 16. Tigers basketball might just be better than Tigers football. Hear that, Dabo Sweeney?
Ooh. By the way, I was a C average student in geography, so I'm not going to answer that question whatsoever.
You haven't won a 410, so just do the math. You should be fine.
Yeah.
It's Arizona.
It's Arizona.
If you didn't know that answer, but I think you do.
Yeah, but so much for the ACC having a down year, right? They just go 8-0 in the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament. Yeah, so much for that, right? But as far as Clemson, excuse me, very unprofessional, by the way. I was just eating a banana, but I have low sugar, so I apologize for that. But how the Clemson Tigers got to the Sweet 16, they defeated New Mexico in round 1 and had to eke out a victory against Baylor that they pretty much almost gave away. Yeah. They almost choked away a double-digit lead and had to hold on for dear life has the Bills even cut the lead to 2 at one point. Behind poor shooting and very inconsistency from the Tigers offense. However, they did get a bit of a reprieve in the name of big man PJ Hall, the 6'10" NBA prospect. Was able to score some key baskets. However, he's actually out of foul trouble. I mean, he's contributed 14 points and 3 rebounds in round 1 and 11 points in round 2, but he hasn't been able to stay on the court because of foul trouble. If he can get rolling, that'll help out an awful lot. Chase Hunter and Joe Girard has been the Clemson Tigers' best offensive players in the first 2 games with 20 and 13 respectively. When you look at the Tigers offensively, this is one of the better historically offensive seasons by far. They averaged 77 and a half points a game, the most since 2008, 2009. And I mentioned that PJ Hall is such a big part and needs to stay out of foul trouble because the offense evolves around him. Despite the ranking, they're middle of the pack in scoring defense. They are only ranked 133 in the nation and allow 70 points per game. They're give me a second. They're on track to allow at least 70 points per game for only the second time in the last 20 years. So obviously, I think the Clemson Tigers have found a formula. It's been their defense. They've been able to make stops where they need it. They definitely needed against Baylor down the stretch because their offense completely disappeared, and Ray J. Dennis went off in the second half of that game for Baylor and lead that comeback. Looking at the Tigers who they're matching up, they're going up against Arizona in the Sweet 16. It's a tall order because the Wildcats, they can score. We talked about Caleb Love ad nauseum the last couple of weeks on this show. So so Clemson's gonna have to figure out a way to get their offense and be able to. They may be in a situation where they have to go basket for basket, which may not be a good thing if you're going up against Arizona offense that can score 90 in a heartbeat. But Clemson, their defense has been rock solid. We'll see what happens this weekend.
We come now.
Which, by the way, may feel like a road game. By the way, since Arizona,
everything is going to be a road game for Arizona's opponents. Everything. I mean, North Carolina got that 1 seed, and they're going to pay the price a little bit with their ceramics this weekend. Speaking of, we come to the exception that we were mentioning with Jay's little public service announcement there, only to find out that he has the number 1 seed UNC in this region, who not surprisingly proved their powerhouse status in Charlotte last weekend.
Yeah, I mean, this could very well be the passionate member of Tar Heel Nation talking more than the objective college basketball analyst. But if there was a 1 seed that folks were betting wouldn't get to the Sweet 16, it was UNC, and are thus surprised that they're here. I'm not. That said, they've got some work to do if they expect to get to the Final Four, starting with not starting slowly. Number 16 seed Wagner, who had only 7 active players, was within 5 points of the heels for the first 11 minutes of UNC's opening round game, the definition of a number 1 seed playing with its food. And a much tougher opponent in number 9 seed Michigan State led the Heels by as many as 12 points until that fateful under 8 timeout. More on that in a moment. But this trend of slow starts is something they need to fix if they're going to get past the second weekend. Now, UNC eventually got their stuff together and played like the 1 seed they are, increasing their lead over Wagner to 12 going into the break, and then blew the Seahawks out of the gym in the second half by 16 en route to a 28-point win. UNC did what it does on offense. 22 from R.J. Davis on 8 of 13, 4 of 7, 2 of 2. A 20 and 15 double-double from Armando Bacot, his 7th straight NCAA tournament game with a double-double. Solid contribution of 13 points from Cormac Ryan. And Jalen Withers, in his hometown of Charlotte, picked up the slack from a missing in action Harrison Ingram with a 16-10 double-double of his own, while that number 6th ranked defense shut down Wagner, allowing them to shoot just 39.7% from the floor. Per usual, UNC owned the glass 41-20. Points in the paint 48-20. Fast break points 14-4, and they hit as many free throws, 15, as they allowed. In the Michigan State game, the Heels were flat, lethargic, and utterly out of sync on both ends of the floor for the first 12 minutes of that game. They got punched in the face by the Spartans, and until that under 8 media timeout, didn't look like they were getting up. Hubert Davis didn't even let CBS sideline reporter Allie LaForce ask a basketball question, telling her, quote, "We can't talk about any basketball stuff until we join the fight." And then he went back to the bench and lit into his team. It seemed to snap the heels out of their funk, and from that point on, their offense went on a 23-3 run to come from 8 down to go up 9 into the half. Their defense forced 3 turnovers, 7 missed shots, and blocked 2 more. They kept it up, outscoring Sparty by 7 in the second half en route to the 16-point victory despite 24 points from State's leading scorer, Tyson Walker. That increased their NCAA tournament record in the state of Carolina to 36-2, 14-1 in the city of Charlotte. Once again, R.J. Davis was R.J. Davis, 20 points on 7 of 15, 3 of 7, and 3 of 4. Baycott was Baycott, 18 points, but only 7 boards. But this time, Ingram was Ingram, 17 points, including 5 of 7 from 3 and 7 rebounds. And Ryan chipped in again with 14 points, including 2 of 5 from 3. Michigan State didn't let UNC dominate inside. They actually out-rebounded the Heels 37-32, and the points in the paint were even 28 all. But UNC converted 11 Sparty turnovers into 16 points, outshot them from both three-point range and at the line. So the loophole to the rule of never betting against Tom Izzo in March is unless he's facing North Carolina, who is now 5-0 in the tournament against him, including wins in the 2005 Final Four and 2009 title game. Now, UNC is making their 36th trip to the Sweet 16 because they did what they do best as a team on both sides of the ball, once they finally got on track, that is. And their best players led the way. They need that dominant defense, the A games of their best players, that ownership of the glass and the charity stripe, and Hubert Davis continuing to maximize his lineup and rotation, like recognizing that the team plays better without point guard Elliot Cadeau, who is mistake-prone with the ball and with the shots he takes, when he replaces him with defensive spark plug Seth Trimble. All of that needs to come with them to Los Angeles. And most importantly, the Heels need to stop with the slow start, something they can ill afford against the likes of Alabama and potentially Arizona and old pal Caleb Love, who are 2 of the top 3 teams in points per game and 2 of the top 10 in adjusted offensive efficiency per KenPom. If they can do all that, then it'll be no surprise to see this team extend their NCAA record of Final Fours to 2022. And there are some numbers that are on their side. After Saturday's win, North Carolina was ranked 18th in adjusted offensive efficiency on KenPom and was hitting their threes at a 35.8% clip. The last UNC team to do that was the 21-22 edition. All that UNC team did was reach the national title game. Just saying.
They also lost, just a heads up. But they were an 8 seed and got themselves into it. It's amazing the feast or famine of the Hubert Davis era so far. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, Arizona and North Carolina are going to be the matchup on Saturday. I'm just giving you this straight up right now. I know things can change,
it's what everybody wants.
I know it's everybody wants, but honestly, anyway. Clemson does not have enough offense, in my opinion, and Alabama does not have enough defense. However, I think Clemson does have a little bit of a shot against Arizona. That's the matchup I want to talk about. Now, I can just come in and say, Caleb Love, PJ Hall, and then finish it off. But I would like to talk about some of the supporting cast first. So in Arizona's win against Long Beach State in the opening round, how about Arizona guard Kylan Boswell scoring 20 points and dishing 8 assists? And then against Dayton, Boswell had 2 points and 2 assists, but then Jaden Bradley came off of the bench for him and had 12 points, 3 blocks, and 3 steals. Arizona is looking to get to their first Final Four in, I can't believe I'm saying this because I remember when they were dominant young, 23 years. They haven't been back there since 2001. 4 Wildcats on this team averaged more than 11 points per game. Obviously, Caleb Love is the biggest with 18.1. But you have that combo of Boswell, Bradley, and KJ Lewis, who have 9.8, 6.7, and 6.1 points, respectively. It's a very good 8-man rotation, and they score so much. They have the second highest amount of points of any team per game in this season at 87.6. That's the second highest among teams left in the NCAA tournament field. The tops is Alabama, who is also playing in this region here in Los Angeles. So leave your defense out of the door, apparently. However, Clemson does have the defense to open up the door, so to speak. Obviously, we can talk about PJ Hall, 18.5 points per game, but how about guard Chase Hunter, 21 points in the game against New Mexico, 20 points in the win against Baylor, 3 for 5 from 3, and then there was also 4 Tigers in scoring figures. Obviously, we mentioned Hall beforehand. Joseph Garrard III and Ian Shiflin also scored 11 beats. This team has a lot of depth as well. So, Clemson, they have a team that can actually do a bunch of stuff. They are Chase Hunter again, streaky player and 3-point shooter. He scored 20 points in the last 3 games, 12.7 to 3.1 assists per game. But again, Arizona, with all of that said, and they also only allow 71.9 points per game, 8.3 steals, 13.5 turnovers caused, and also the rebounding, they average 42.5 points per game, and they have 60.3 points per game on the fast break as well. I didn't take a lot of stock into Arizona because I've seen them disappear a lot this season at games that matter against Oregon and Washington State. But what you showed in their first 2 games is their offense can overpower any team that they're facing. And if they can get the best out of Caleb Love as not just a scorer, but a facilitator for the rest of the team, Arizona and North Carolina are the class of this Western region, and they should be the matchup that we see Saturday, very likely in prime time. But any slip up, and we could be in for a little bit of a surprise, and then Arizona North Carolina story that was going to be at the end of the rainbow, book's going to shut on that. We'll see what happens. All right, on to the South. As the American Airlines Center in Dallas, we'll see the following teams: 1 seed Houston, 2 seed Marquette, 4 seed Duke, and 11 seed North Carolina State with, as I say before, power forward DJ Burns. You need 3 powers to show how much power DJ Burns actually has. It's not just an effect, it's a rule. Anthony, obviously you got to talk about the double-digit seed here, the 4th ACC team to make it this far, that being the North Carolina Wolfpack. How did they get here? Why are they here? How are you surprised?
Yeah, as my cat makes a weekly on the Sportsline camera.
I was going to mention he made an appearance earlier before walking in the background, but
but
she will only take whatever you give her, so she doesn't respond well to
remember the exception we were talking about earlier in this segment? This is the exception right here. The Wolfpack has been on a tear. Okay, they 2 weeks ago they were on the outside looking into the NCAA tournament and losing 7 of the last 9 regular season games, finishing 9-11 in conference play. And all they do is go 5 for 5 and win or go home games in the ACC tournament to win the tournament and get the automatic bid into the NCAA tournament. And they knock off number 6 Texas Tech in round 1, and then round 2 had to stave off another Cinderella-like team in Oakland. That was the number 14 seed in that in round 2. Let's second. Sorry about the cat. Actually scratching that melody. But DJ Burns, the big man for NC State, has been the guy, averaging 16.6 a game in the first 2 games, 64.9% from the field, commanding a lot of double teams and bringing up all his outside shooters. He scored 24 against in the 79-73 round of 32 victory over Oakland. He hasn't done it alone now. NC State have all 5 starters finished with 11 points in that game. Jaden Taylor came off the bench in overtime to hit a key 3-pointer that gave NC State a 5-point lead that they eventually hold on to win. Now going back to the Wolfpack overall, they don't turn the ball over. I think that's been the biggest thing this season in the first 2 games. They only turned the ball over 13.8% of the time per KenPom. That's ranked 10th best among Division 1A teams. Everything goes through DJ Burns, and they're gonna need to take care of the basketball because obviously, I'm kind of setting Jay up for his angle on this one. They have a guy that I spoke about last week, and Marquette, the number 2 seed in this region, and a team that is known for really making the opponents pay with mistakes. So, and obviously this is set them up, Jay. You lock them down situation. A team that has to take care of the basketball going up against a team that does a good job of forcing a lot of mistakes from opposing teams.
Yeah, I'll jump into that in a second, but I gotta throw this out here because I came across this the other day. This is the 5th time all 3 triangle schools, it's what they call NC State, Duke, and North Carolina. It's the Raleigh, Chapel Hill, Durham triangle, have may advanced to the second weekend of the tourney. The previous years were 2015, 2005, 1989, 1986. In each of those years, one triangle team has made the Final Four. Twice, one of the teams won the title, Duke in 2015 and UNC in 2005. How about that? But as Anthony perfectly set me up, yeah, my team that I'm not surprised is the Marquette Golden Eagles. Now, I said it back in November on our college basketball preview, and I said it again last week on our March Madness preview. Marquette is a Final Four team, especially with Tyler Kolek healthy and looking very Steve Nashian with the way he orchestrates the Golden Eagles offense. As I said to Rabbi on text during their 87-69 opening round win over Western Kentucky, Tyler Kolek did Tyler Kolek things. 18 points, 6 rebounds, 11 assists, almost like he'd never been gone. What oblique injury. 10 of those 11 assists came in the second half as the Golden Eagles rebounded from a rough first half. They trailed the Hilltoppers by 7 at the break. That is the name of Western Kentucky, if you weren't already aware. And they just dominated both ends of the floor, shooting 56% over the final 20 minutes, outscoring WKU 51-26 en route to a win over the 15 seed. Kolek's backcourt mate and Marquette's leading scorer, Cam Jones, led with 28, including 5 of 10 from 3. In his second game back from injury, Kolek recorded another double-double, 21 points and 11 assists, while repeatedly weaving in, out, and through the Colorado Buffaloes defense, creating drives to the basket for himself or good looks for his teammates. Jones added 18 points despite foul trouble limiting him to just 24 minutes as Marquette, who was up by 11 at the half, held off a furious second-half rally by Colorado, led by one of Rabbi's new favorite players, what's his name, De Silva?
Yeah, Alex De Silva.
There you go. With the teams trading the lead back and forth, especially late, and Marquette held on to win 81-77. This may be Marquette's first appearance in the Sweet 16 in 11 years and head coach Shaka Smart's first in 13 years. We all remember the storybook Final Four run his VCU team had in 2011, but they're facing an NC State team that is trying to pull off the same storybook run to the Final Four, so they'll need to dictate tempo on both ends of the floor. The Golden Eagles create extra possessions by forcing turnovers on defense. They have a 21.1% turnover rate. And not having them on offense, they only commit 14-point turnover. Their offensive turnover rate over is 14.3. Their plus 170 turnover margin is one of the best in the country. They're not a big three-point shooting team. They're just 22 of 57 overall through the first 2 games, 38.6%. They do most of their damage in the paint, shooting 60.6 on 2s against Western Kentucky and 73.5% against Colorado, largely because that's where Kolek operates. With him back at the point, they have 41 assists on their 67 made field goals through the first 2 games. That is a ridiculous assist rate of 61.2%. We all know that Kolek, who's averaging 19 points per game, 5.5 boards, and 11 dimes, and Jones, who's averaging 23 points per game on 17 of 29 from the floor, 58.6%, and 9 of 20 from 3, 45 even. They have a pair of winning guards. The big question is, can they be competitive on the boards, especially the offensive boards? It's an area that's been a struggle for the Golden Eagles all season long. They're 283rd in the nation in offensive rebounding rate, and 319th in the nation in total rebounds per game, with their Draymond Green-like forward Oso Ighodaro pacing them at just 6.8 per game. They can keep teams off the glass while creating some second chance points of their own, along with all the other things I talked about that they already do well and got them here. And most importantly, Tyler Kolek stays healthy. I won't be surprised to see them in the Final Four.
So we talked about Marquette, we talked about NC State. So naturally, we have to talk about the other two teams who are in this region who are playing each other on Friday night. That'd be Duke and Houston. It's not only the best game to watch in this region, it's probably my game to watch of all of the Sweet 16 games overall.
Interesting.
Duke, they dominated on Sunday against James Madison. Really, there was never really a chance for James Madison that game. And it was all led by Jared McCain. Huge from the perimeter all season, but had 8 threes against James Madison, 30 points. But if you think he's going to do that against Houston, I've got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. I don't think that's going to happen.
One of the ones we crossed going to the Barclays on Sunday, Rabbi?
I didn't cross any of them because I took the train.
I did.
Yes, I understand that, but I'm just letting you know when I said it's not we. Jamal Sheed is for Houston. He was 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 10 assists. Made clutch play after clutch play. And of course, he needed to make clutch play after clutch play because everybody in this game fouled out. It's one of the reasons why Texas A&M made a huge run at the end of the game, pretty much overcoming A&M, Texas A&M overcoming an 8-point deficit pretty much just like that. Hit a buzzer-beating three-pointer by Anderson Garcia to A&M, but Houston had a little more time, even though they lost Emmanuel Sharp and LJ Cryer. They had 50 points in that game. And then even though Jamal Sheed, fearless as hell, just hit key free throws, big shot in the final few minutes, 21 points. He eventually also did foul out. They actually had to have a guy who only played 3 games last year, basically this year, hit the game-winning basically the game extending free throws of the game-winning free throws for Houston in that game on Sunday night. Now, Duke's had a very good team this year, but they have not done well.
Rabbi,
yeah.
Forgive the interruption. Do you know the last time a team won an NCAA tournament game fouling out 4 of their 5 starters? You know how far back we have to go?
I have a feeling it's going to be back to before I was born.
1987.
Close. 3 years in. Okay. Back to other stuff here. Duke has not had a good record against a lot of these teams this year that are big. They're only 1-3 against teams who were 1, 2, or 3 seeds in this year's tournament. Their only win coming against Baylor, now out. 2 losses against UNC, 1 loss against Arizona. Irresistible force versus immovable object, part number 2. Houston's defense is 2nd in the nation this year, according to Ken Pom. Drink when you hear Ken Pom many more times during this show. And Duke's offense is 5th in the nation this year. Jamal Sheed, as we mentioned, going to be the nation's best defensive player and awards in everything on Sunday. And they held Texas A&M point guard Wade Taylor IV to 21 points, but 5 of 26 from the field, which is insane, and only 3 of 13 from deep. This is a matchup that's going to decide a lot. This is the best Duke has played all year, but again, as I mentioned, and as we saw them really dominate against James Madison in person on Sunday, but as Jay has seen also, Duke's worst performances have come at the biggest times. Mm-hmm. Houston is the best opponent that Duke is going to play this season, at least defensively and overall. Can they overcome that, and can Duke finally reach their destiny of getting back to the Final Four? Winning this game will be a big help to doing that, but Houston, who has been one of the most consistent teams in the country for the last 4 or 5 years, has other ideas.
I tell you this, Rabbi. I mean, we talked about it on Sunday, and I talked about it on the show. The thing that John Shire is most concerned about is whether or not this team brings the competitive fire element to their games. We saw it on Sunday. From pretty much the opening tip, those guys were on a mission to leave no doubt. They wanted to run James Madison out of the gym. They did not play with their food. The thing is they're going against team that literally, if you had to pick one word to define the Houston Cougars, it is toughness. Jamal Sheed is the personification of that toughness. If Houston hits first, it'll be interesting to see if Duke recovers from getting punched in the face first, if that's how the game starts.
That's how you beat Duke this year, and that's how North Carolina really started in those first two games against Duke. And even though Duke nudged themselves back in those games, they never really recovered, and that's going to be something very interesting to see, as a lot of spotlight will be on that game on Friday night. Finally, have you met the Midwest region? It'll be in Detroit, and it is a star-studded region. 1 seed Purdue, 2 seed Tennessee, 3 seed Creighton, 5 seed Gonzaga. All of those teams combined, 2 Final Fours, both Gonzagas, ironically enough. So Gonzaga being the team with the most pedigree out of those 4 teams is a very weird feeling, but that's what we got here. Anthony, on the last show, you incorrectly predicted Tennessee may not make it here this far. They sure did, so it's time for you to mention why you're surprised that they're here.
Well, I incorrectly predicted that they were the team that could get upset in the first round. However, they haven't exactly been world beaters, all right? They took care of business against St. Peter's in round 1. But boy, if they may have to pop in a tape of the 2004 Detroit Pistons to figure out how to win games when your offense is literally MIA. I mean, they won a game against Texas where they shot 3 for 25 from 3. Dalton Knecht, the best player, one of the best scorers in the country, was 5 for 18. They shot 33% for the game, 29 in the first half, and still had a 9-point lead at halftime. That just March Madness, ladies and gentlemen. That just tells you that that Tennessee's bread and butter is pretty much been their defense all season, because their defense, they forced 17 turnovers. Max Adams and the Longhorns tells them 36% shooting. So the defense was definitely there. But the concern that I had in the last show did show up. It just that their defense got them over the hump against Texas. And now they're playing a Creighton team. By the way, I settled on Tennessee being the surprise team by default because I picked Creighton to beat them in my tournament bracket. But seeing how they played in the last game, it is a surprise. And you look at the Devontae's defense. The top 10 defensive efficiency according to Ken Palm. Obviously, Dalton Knecht is the guy that gets in the buckets, but I talked about the last show. What happens if he has an off shooting night? Who's going to step it up? Jonas Adu did step up. He scored 11 points off the bench. He's been a small part for them all season. Devontae's a 13-0 when he scores at least 14 points. So if he can provide them an offensive spark, that's always a good start for the Volunteers. Now you're going up against a Creighton team that is one of the best outshot shooting teams in the league. They shoot the top 40 shooting the ball from 2s and 3s and from the charity stripe. So the Volunteers defense it came through big against Texas. Obviously made light work with St. Peter's. Again, they're going to have the work cut out for them against Creighton. It's going to be even more so if they have another offensive nightmarish performance like they did last weekend. They're going to have to shoot the ball a lot better. I mean, get to the foul. Their saving grace with the defense and their ability to get to the foul line and shoot free throws. They cannot rely on that if they're going to get to the Final Four, because like I said, most times when you shoot 3 for 25 from 3s, you lose that game. And this is one of those rare exceptions where the team that shot the ball poorly actually ends up winning the game.
Too much orange. That's why. That's all I think was really the answer. There's too much orange on the court. Charlotte couldn't handle it. Okay. We used this line before, but I'm going to use it again because it's apropos. I actually heard analyst Dan Bonner say it on Sunday. Jay, death, taxes, and Few playing in week
You
2
stole my line.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do it for a reason. So Death Taxes had Mark Few making it to week 2 of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. I know that there was plenty of chatter after the brackets were revealed that McNeese State could potentially upset Gonzaga in the 5-12 game. Gonzaga wasn't the Gonzaga of old. McNeese's up-tempo style of play, especially on defense in terms of getting steals and forcing turnovers, and their ability to rain down threes on offense wasn't a good matchup for the Zags. But as I said on on last week's show, I felt the Midwest number 5 seed, despite not coming into the NCAA's with a potential Final Four resume, like in years past, still had the better team and should get past McNeese State, which they did 86-65, which was a larger margin of victory than I thought they would have. They held the Cowboys to just 33.3% on field goals, including 22.7% from three, while shooting 51.7% from the floor and 47.6% from three themselves. They had 5 players scoring double figures, and they won the rebound battle by 7 en route to that 21-point victory. Mark Few just doesn't lose in the first round, hasn't since 2008. Then came the matchup with number 4 seed Kansas, who I did think would be a first-round upset victim. And for the first half, we got a hell of a game between an OG blue blood program and one of the best newer blue blood programs of recent vintage. Despite the Jayhawks being undermanned, they went toe-to-toe with the Zags and actually had a 1-point lead after the first 20 minutes. Then the Zags rained holy hell down on the Jayhawks, outscoring them 46-24 in the second half en route to the 89-68 win. Zags shot 67% from the floor, hit 5 of 6 threes, and averaged 1.438 points per possession in that second half, and had a stretch where they hit 8 shots in a row and 12 of 13. For the game, they shot 60% from the floor, 53% from three, had 19 assists on their 35 field goals. That's a 54.3% assist rate, and won the rebounding battle by 7. And for a team that had some defensive concerns, they held Kansas to 38.6% from the floor, 40.9% from three, but only allowed them to take 22. And they didn't let Kansas get to the line, just 9 free throw attempts. Overall, across the first 2 rounds, Gonzaga averaged 87.5 points per game, shot 59% from the floor, and hit 18 of 36 from beyond the arc, straight up 50%. The only starter who shot less than 50% overall and is not averaging double figures in points per game is point guard Ryan Nebhart, but he's orchestrated this offense to perfection with 21 assists against just 8 turnovers in the 2 games. And as Rabbi said, stealing what was going to be the line I really wanted to use today, Death Taxes and Mark Few in the Sweet 16. I'm not surprised the Zags are here. No one else should be either. However, the 7'4" question is, can they get past a Boilermakers team that is number 3 in total offense and number 1 from beyond the arc? They lost to Zach Edey and company by 10 back in November on a neutral court in Hawaii in the Maui Invitational before they sorted themselves out and became the team we saw last week. Did they learn any lessons that could change things for this meeting? If so, then I won't be surprised to see them in the Final Four.
Well, considering you just stole a portion of my angle with Purdue and
What about
Gonzaga,
fair play, Rabbi?
That's the easiest portion of it. By the way, made a mistake beforehand. Purdue does have 2 Final Four appearances to their name, but they're way back there. I don't even remember when they were, but they're pre-Gene Katie era, I think. Yes. So I just wanted to mention that up front. But Purdue has made the Sweet 16 a lot of times. In fact, they've lost in this round 5 times in the era of Matt Painter. So 6 times a charm. They'll play Gonzaga, as Jay mentioned, on Friday. And this is the 3rd time that they've met each other in the last 16 months. So we have data points to know exactly what Zach Edey has done against this team. So 2022, we'll start with that. 23.7 rebounds and 3 blocks, and an easy 84-66 win by Gonzaga. And then we talked about the Maui Invitational. That's the happened this year. 25 points, 14 rebounds, 3 blocks. Not a lot of teams can do anything to Zach Edey, as we've mentioned. Now, does this path seem familiar for Purdue? Because this is interesting. In the Maui Invitational, Purdue won 3 games. In order, they beat Gonzaga, Tennessee, and Marquette, which they can play all in order if they get that far, and they would literally play them in all 3 of the rounds, Sweet 16, Elite 8, and Final 4. Matt Painter and the Purdue Boilermakers are not FAFO, which means fuck around and find out. Nobody is doing that this year against them. 184 points in 2 games against Grambling and Utah State. Neither of those games have been close, and their efficiency has been pretty good. As mentioned before, Gonzaga beat Kansas by 21 after a pretty easy game against McNeese State. Gonzaga's 9th appearance in the Sweet 16. They've alternated years, by the way, in the Elite 8 from 2015 to 2023, and the 2020 team would have had a pretty good shot via COVID. So this is always the rougher year for Gonzaga, even if you could say rougher being in the Sweet 16. These are 2 teams that very much know each other, and because of preseason tournaments, that always is going to be the case. I'm very interested to see what happens in this game on Friday night, because sometimes that familiarity does breed contempt. That could also breed mistakes. And I wouldn't be surprised if Purdue lost in this spot. But I think Purdue is a much better team than the team that lost to Fairleigh Dickinson a year ago. And we saw that last weekend in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
I said it on last week's show. I mean, the difference, there's been you've seen the difference a year can make with Lawyer and Smith. I mean, they're shooting better, they're playmaking better. I mean, Smith is one of the top point guards in the nation. You know, the Illinois State transfer, whose name is escaping me at the moment.
Escaping me as well. Just go on.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's giving them that third guard that they've really needed. This is a more well-rounded team surrounding Zach Edey. So it does, like I said, I have more confidence in this edition than I have in any of the previous Edey era teams. But you know, they're going to have to run a gauntlet. This is going to, you know, those 3 teams are no joke. And you can't afford a slip up against any of them, or they will knock you out.
Lance Jones, Southern Illinois transfer.
Thank you.
Is Southern Illinois transfer, not
Southern
Illinois
Illinois.
State transfer, is the guy you're talking about. Okay,
Yeah.
Let's get out of here. I'm tired. We actually finished a show in under 2 hours, which for me, minor miracle. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I'm Steven Rabinowitz. YouTube.com/onthesportslines on demand, Facebook.com/onthesportslines live, and Jay, plug away.
Our Twitter handle is @ONTH Sportslines, where you will find a link to this show tomorrow. And we constantly post other interesting tidbits of sports-related information we think are worth your time. I put one up this morning. We all know how much baseball is about certain numbers and how certain magic numbers, the big milestone numbers, are so ingrained in the history of the game. The Athletic's Jason Stark did a terrific piece on those milestone numbers, and if the game has changed too much for any player to ever reach any of those magic numbers ever again. The link is up on our Twitter page. Check it out.
Happy Easter to all those that celebrate. Happy opening day to all those that celebrate. And happy anniversary to me and my wife, Randy. Celebrating
Happy anniversary,
10 years.
Happy anniversary.
Celebrating 10 years this upcoming Friday, the 29th. That's one of the reasons why we won't be back, by the way, until April 13th for another edition of On the Sports Line. So enjoy yourselves. See you then. We'll talk then. Have a good night, guys.
Night, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone.